As you might be aware, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia recently signed a mutual defense pact. And today I briefly want to talk about what it is and what are the ramifications of this. So one thing to keep in mind is that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have always had strong military and economic ties. About 20 years ago, there used to be two brigades of Pakistan Army that were stationed in Saudi Arabia, an armored brigade and an infantry brigade. And part of their mission there was to help, in case of an uprising maybe, to help the Saudi regime, keep control of their territories, but also to train Saudi troops. Then I was part of the contingent that was deployed during the first Gulf War. We didn't participate in the war, but Pakistan had an infantry brigade and an armored brigade inside Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War. So there is a long history of cooperation, military and civilian, between the two governments. Saudi cadets and officers also come and train in Pakistan. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia is one of the most stable financial supporters of Pakistan. So why now? Why is it that they had to publicly sign an agreement, even though unofficially it goes without saying that both countries have mutually depended on each other, and Pakistan has always assured Saudi Arabia that they'll be there in case there is a threat to Saudi integrity as a nation. I think part of the reason this has happened is because of the aggressive actions of the current Israeli government in the region. Now, we have seen the Netanyahu government, of course, destroy Gaza, round up people in West Bank. They have bombed Syria, Lebanon, right? Of course, the Houthi rebels, but also Qatar. And I think that's what triggered this response. I mean, traditionally, Saudi Arabia has always had the United States guarantee for their defense against Iran or any other nations that they see as belligerent nations. But for the first time, it seems the Saudis realized that the US guarantee may not be enough. I mean, if Qatar, a strong US ally, a little city-state that houses the largest US base in the region, if their territory can be bombed by the state of Israel, then of course everything else is within reach of state of Israel and their aircraft and their bombing mechanisms. So I think that's what has precipitated that, an alliance between the only Muslim nuclear-armed state with a professional standing army and air force and navy, and the richest country in the Muslim world, Saudi Arabia. So in terms of the two nations and their relationships, I think this mutual pact obligates them to help each other, but maybe it would be beneficial to both of them. Pakistan can guarantee to some extent that their troops and armed forces will be there to defend Saudi Arabia. And on the other hand, Saudi Arabia can more openly now support Pakistan with their economy and with their economic troubles. It has been sort of formalized now. But on a larger scale, does it make the region stable, or does it lead it to, a place where war becomes a reality? I'm not really sure. I mean, I read these situations and talk about them, but I'm just reading the Pakistani newspapers, and a lot of questions are being asked. Just yesterday, someone asked of the defense minister about the nature of this pact and asked them, well, according to this pact, if one nation is attacked by another, is the other required to defend them? And his answer was yes. That is the binding aspect of this agreement. Now, how would this benefit Pakistan in the long run, I'm not sure. Pakistani troops have always been deployed in the peacekeeping missions, in the UN peacekeeping missions. Actually, Pakistan is one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping missions, but this is a completely new territory of military obligations, especially a treaty that sort of mandates Pakistan to show up if Saudi Arabia is ever attacked by any other nation. So it binds Pakistan to that obligation. But I think this should also send a message to Netanyahu and his government that, yes, they are powerful in the region. They have the most powerful air force, so they can pretty much bomb anyone at will. But that with such pacts, the Gulf nations as well as Saudi Arabia maybe can have a deterrence, a sort of a deterrence that says, okay, we're not helpless here, and in case you cross a certain line, we will be able to, if not defend ourselves, but also retaliate. And that could lead to further escalations in the regions. I mean, the entire edifice of Israeli superiority is built on this fact that they have the unquestioned US support, but that they also have the most sophisticated and powerful air force arsenal in the region. And that is why they can, easily decide that preemption is their military strategy. You only preempt if you're sure that your opponents will not be able to respond in kind. And this kind of dispels that, this kind of pokes a hole in that strategy. So will Israel, especially Netanyahu and his ilk, will they rethink their regional strategies? Another thing to keep in mind is what would be the US response to it? What is the Trump administration going to say? Will there be pressure brought to bear on Pakistan and Saudi Arabia to somehow not conduct this treaty or mutual agreement? I think Pakistanis are already anticipating that because according to the opinions and whatever the politicians and leaders are saying, they are asserting their right to have autonomous mutual treaties and defense pacts with other nations. So I think they're kind of anticipating it, but there'll be a lot of pressure on them. I mean, as a scholar and public scholar, if I could call myself that, what do I think about it? I mean, obviously, it's a new scenario. I am not at this point clear as to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do think it's a reaction to Israeli intransigence in the region. And if we see it as a reaction, then, I mean, the only way to make sure that it further does not escalate into an actual conflict is if United States commits to peace in the Middle East and commits to a two-state solution and tries to control the worst impulses of the right-wing Israeli governments. I think that's what would be a good path to making sure that we don't end up with two militarized blocs and end up entering a sort of a two-sided endless war. Right now, it's a one-sided endless war where Israel is doing whatever it wants to do in Gaza and occupied territories, and no one has been able to stop them. But it might eventually become a conflict where there are two sides to it, two powerful sides to it. So my hope is that United States, instead of following the path of pressuring Pakistan to back out of it, which I think is likely to be their path, that they will sit with their Israeli counterparts and say, okay, let's rethink what you're doing. Because the world, especially in the global south, is opposed to what Israel is doing in Gaza. and maybe restrain the Netanyahu government and bring them to the table to finally sit down and do what was promised in Oslo, an autonomous, self-contained, independent Palestinian state. And I think that's the only way to find a lasting peace in the region. So these are some of my thoughts on this latest development. I will read some more, learn some more, and try to share these thoughts with you. I do apologize, I haven't been posting much lately, but that's because of some personal reasons, but I will try to upload more of my thoughts on this topic and others. Please also keep in mind that I've also now started a Substack newsletter, and the link is in the description, and I would love to have your support on that. That's all. Stay safe, take care, and as always, peace and love.